So, payroll tax and pro sports. So, we're not gonna be naive. I know a lot of us in here follow sports, and a lot of us in here have general understanding of what payroll tax is. So, really what I'm trying to do is combine two familiar topics and show you how there's some insight that undermines the logic between what happens between some of our most blockbuster pro sports deals. I'm sure a lot of us follow sports, follow free agency, arbitration, and we know how that works. Especially if you're from Dallas, I'm sure trade deadlines have you going through it this year. But yeah, let's get into it. So overall, just really quick, this presentation is to analyze the rate at which the contracts and payroll of pro athletes is taxed across space and time. So how it varies over state, sport, tax bracket, whatever income level they're in, because that stuff is what affects you in this sense. I wanted to get into the history part of it and kind of show how it's changed over time, but to be honest with you, I don't think that bears much significance after I kind of researched this a little bit. Overall, this is the main point, my thesis right here, is to provide an alternative perspective to the way in which many of us view the logic behind trade and free agency. So obviously we know the reasons for that stuff, and we know the sports world and how the reasons why those trades and signings occur, but what we don't really know as much about is the logistical side of it, unless you're like an attorney or a CPA or somebody's agent. And I found that really interesting because one of my favorite things to look at when I look at how these blockbuster deals go down is the logistics behind it. I'm sure I mentioned in the previous presentation, I'm a big Dodgers guy. So watching the Shohei Ohtani contract and how he basically like deferred all but 10% of his earnings for tax purposes and retirement purposes. Found that pretty interesting. So also is to provide insight on how much tax varies state by state, the complexities that come with arbitrarily signing into such a large payroll. So I mean, in short, what it is when you bind yourself to a large contract, large sum of money, you're a pro athlete making a lot of money, you're gonna pay a lot of taxes. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge, but there's more to be said about that. And also to show why a state litigation agency and accounting is such a necessary industry. I really should say such a necessary industry in the sports world. I'm sure we all know agents are a necessity, but it goes beyond what we think. There's more logistics behind it than what you think. And when I started researching this, I really found out that the logistics behind this is a lot more complex than what we think. So let's get into it. So how does payroll tax work? Obviously, I'm sure we all are familiar with this. It's a standard tax on what one pays on the gross income. I'm sure we all know that it varies state by state. But really, if you were to look at it and look on like the IRS website or whatever, there's three main things that affect how your payroll tax works. It's your location, where you live, state and local tax. So obviously, we all know that people who live in the West Coast, California, Oregon, probably pay more than what we pay down here in Texas. Brackets of income, again, I'm sure we all know, the more money you make, ideally, the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. Ideally, it's a fixed system where it's going up. It's not really like that. So that gets us into our number 3 reason. Tax credits, write-offs. I'm sure your favorite pro athlete or celebrity, whoever makes a large sum of money using a large contract, this is probably how they exploit the system to be to their advantage. I can sit here and talk about this for hours. It's just so complex. I'm not going to. If you want to know more about that, you can go to law school. So really quick, before we get to it, I want to reiterate this visual again. So just note that FICA is 7% nationwide again. I'm sure we all kind of know that. But I'm going to give some insight on just how much it varies by location. Like you're talking about 12% plus of your income being affected moving from, let's say you're assigning in Miami going out to California. Like, I mean, when you're in a multi-million-dollar contract, that can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars lost out of us. That's the next slide. So actually really quick, I want to put this in perspective because we can look at charts and stuff all day and really not get a qualitative measure. So instead of looking at it quantitatively, I want to look at it qualitatively. So just need 2 people really quick, just Steve, take this forward. I got you. Okay, so congrats, you just signed just for the sake of making this easy, you're our free agent number 1. You're a right-handed pitcher signed with Los Angeles Dodgers for $1 million a year, and you must pay the following taxes. Ideally, if you're not exploiting any credit, okay? So you must pay FICA, which everybody's got to pay, California state tax, 1% additional tax for earners over $1 million in the state of California, STI tax, mental health, Medicare redistribution tax at 1%, and California standard unemployment protection tax at 3.4%. So overall, ideally, again, if you don't exploit anything, you're looking at 25% of your income loss, according to an attorney that I looked at in California. He operates minor league baseball contracts. Your net salary you're looking at, before you even pay agent, list cost of living, excluding all of that, just off your paycheck, you're looking at losing a quarter of your income. $250,000 which you lost. Now, our second volunteer, congrats, you also signed a blockbuster deal for $1 million. But signed with the Texas Rangers for $1 million for 1 year. It's the exact same contract, identical in the sports sense, but you only pay FICA and the federal unemployment tax that you also pay in Texas for protection. It's weird, California and Texas, it's the same tax, but they have it like, I mean, I'm sure there's some 99% of your income being lost, just depending on how you manage things arbitrarily. And I actually plugged this into TurboTax because figuring it out for Texas is a lot easier. But overall, you're looking at only losing about 90% of what you originally had through that contract. So overall, I mean, you're looking at, you kept 2/3 of what you kept. You only retain 1/3 of what that net difference is. If that makes sense. So I think that's really interesting. Once again, I mean, I wanted to go more in depth about this, but the more I realized it, the more I realized like it seems like I was going down a rabbit hole. Yeah, you guys are finance majors and have to learn about this stuff later on. I don't envy you guys. But overall, in conclusion, guys, while this is not a sole reason, it can be a key underlying contributor to the logic that proceeds from the most notable trades and signings in sports. Only non-casual can tell you it's not the only underlying logic, but it's certainly an interesting perspective to look at things from. And I want to say, like, when you look at these deals, I don't know if any of you guys followed like the Bryce Harper trade signing in like 2019. There was a big deal about his tax deferral, and that's why he didn't go down on the West Coast. People were saying that a little bit. And it happens across sports too. I'm just talking about baseball because I think baseball is the most computer created. But I think like it's an interesting take. Overall, what I'm trying to do again, restate that thesis, is I really want to try to give you guys an unfair perspective on some of the logic that goes on behind the scenes of your favorite sports, favorite athletes, what they do with arbitration, and how tax incentives or tax penalties can affect them. Here's my sources.